The funny thing about heartbreak is that it never announces itself. It just slips quietly into your chest one night, right between a laugh and a kiss, and you don't even realize it's bleeding until it hurts to breathe. That's what happened to me the night Ethan called me by another name. It was supposed to be a celebration. Ethan had just gotten promoted at the firm, his first big break after 3 years of sleepless nights and too much coffee. We went to a small bar downtown, the kind that smelled of whiskey and nostalgia, the kind of place where people celebrated victories they weren't sure they deserved. He was tipsy, grinning from ear to ear, cheeks flushed in a way that made my heart do that stupid little jump it had been doing since the day I met him. We'd been best friends for 5 years, roommates for 3, and something more for the last 6 months, though neither of us had dared to define it. He always said, "Labels ruin good things, Liam," and I believed him until that night. The moment still replays in slow motion. He leaned over the table, eyes half-lidded, voice slurred with warmth and whiskey. "God, I love you, Alex," he murmured. Alex. The name sliced through the music, through the laughter, through me. I froze, smiling like an idiot, pretending I hadn't heard it, but my stomach twisted so hard I thought I might throw up. He didn't even notice. He just smiled that soft, heartbreakingly beautiful smile and reached for my hand across the table. "Come on," he said. "Let's get out of here." And I did, because I was too afraid to ask who Alex was. The next morning, the world was quiet, too quiet. Ethan stumbled into the kitchen, hair a mess, wearing my hoodie like he always did. The sunlight poured in, catching the curve of his neck, the small scar on his jaw, the one he got defending me in a college bar fight years ago. He smiled at me, the same easy smile that had once made everything in life feel less terrifying. But now, it just reminded me that love can look like home right before it burns down. "You okay?" he asked, pouring coffee. "Yeah," I lied. "Just tired." That's the thing about unspoken pain, it doesn't fade. It festers. Days passed, then weeks, and I found myself tiptoeing around him, memorizing every glance, every word, searching for signs that I hadn't imagined it. But Ethan, still laughing too loud at my terrible jokes, still stealing my fries when we ordered takeout, still falling asleep on the couch with his head on my shoulder, and still sometimes whispering names in his sleep. Not always Alex, sometimes just him. I wanted to ask, God, I wanted to, but every time I opened my mouth, the words tangled in my throat. Because what if I wasn't ready for the answer? Then came the storm. One night, thunder shaking the city, the rain turning the streets into rivers. I came home late from work, soaked, exhausted, and found Ethan sitting on the floor of our living room, surrounded by old photographs. He was crying. I'd never seen him cry before. Not when he lost his father. Not when he broke his arm in college. Not even when he told me he didn't believe in forever. But there he was, eyes red, hands trembling, clutching a photo like it was a lifeline. I stepped closer. "Ethan?" He looked up, startled. His lips parted, as if he'd forgotten I lived there. Then he quickly wiped his face, trying to smile. "Hey," he whispered. "You're home. What's going on?" He shook his head. "Nothing. Just cleaning up." I glanced down at the picture in his hand, 2 young men, laughing in front of a lake. One of them was Ethan, maybe 20, carefree, sunburned, happy. The other taller, blonde, with that same warmth I'd fallen for, must have been Alex. My chest tightened. So this was him, the ghost I'd been fighting without a name. I tried to sound calm. "He looks nice." Ethan's voice cracked. He died 3 years ago. Car crash. Silence. The kind that fills every corner of a room until you can barely breathe. I started. He cut me off. "I never told you because I didn't want to lose you too." My throat burned. "Lose me?" He looked at me with those same eyes that had always felt like home eyes, now heavy with guilt and love. "Because I started falling for you while I was still trying to forget him." I should have felt angry, betrayed. But all I felt was heartbreak, not for me, but for him. For the boy who had loved and lost and never healed. He looked so small sitting there, surrounded by memories he couldn't bury. So I did the only thing I could. I knelt down beside him, took the picture gently from his hands, and whispered, "You don't have to forget him, Ethan, but don't punish yourself for moving on." He stared at me for a long time, searching my face like he was trying to decide if he deserved to believe me. Then he whispered, "Liam, I called you Alex that night, didn't I?" I nodded. "Yeah. I'm so sorry." "I know," I said softly. "Just don't do it again." That night, he kissed me not like before, not like something casual or fleeting. It was a broken, desperate kiss. One that said thank you and I'm sorry all at once. I could taste the rain on his lips, the grief in his breath, the love he was too scared to name. When we pulled apart, he rested his forehead against mine. "Stay," he whispered. "I'm not going anywhere," I said. And for the first time, I meant it. But love built on pain is a fragile thing, and some ghosts don't stay buried. 2 weeks later, Ethan started withdrawing again, quieter, distant, disappearing into long walks and half-finished texts. He said he needed time. I said I understood. But what I didn't say was that every minute apart felt like losing him twice. The breaking point came on a Sunday morning. I found him on the balcony, staring at the city skyline, cigarette in hand. The light caught the faint shadows under his eyes. "Ethan," I said softly, "talk to me." He didn't turn around. "You deserve someone whole, Liam, not this mess." "I didn't fall for perfect," I said. "I fell for you." He laughed bitterly. "Then you're a fool." "Maybe," I said, "but at least I'm your fool." That made him turn, slowly. And in that moment, the hurt, the fear, the love, it was all there, tangled and raw and human. He took a step toward me, then another, until we were inches apart. The cigarette burned out between his fingers, smoke curling up like a sigh. "I'm scared," he admitted. "I know. I don't know how to stop loving someone who's gone." "Then don't," I said. "Just love me too." He stared at me for a long time before finally exhaling, the tension in his shoulders melting just a little. And then quietly, hesitantly, he reached for my hand. For the first time, he didn't flinch when our fingers intertwined. Some people think love fixes everything. But the truth? Love only exposes the cracks you tried to hide. After that morning on the balcony, something between us shifted, not broken, but trembling on the edge of something new. Ethan started trying in small, almost clumsy ways. He cooked dinner again, burned half the pasta, and laughed when I teased him. He let me hold him without pretending he wasn't scared. He even deleted Alex's number from his old phone, a small symbolic act that made my chest ache with tenderness. Still, there were moments when I caught him staring into space, eyes lost somewhere I couldn't reach. Grief is a language I don't speak, but I tried to learn every word of it for him. It was late October when the world outside started changing, leaves turning gold, the air heavy with the scent of rain and fading sunlight. We'd been invited to his firm's charity gala, the first time we'd go out together since that night at the bar. He hesitated. "Are you sure you want to go? People might what?" I cut in gently. "See us?" He bit his lip. "Yeah." I smiled, brushing his hand lightly. "Then let them." He didn't answer right away, but when we stepped into the ballroom that night dressed in dark suits, our shoulders brushing, I saw it. The small, quiet pride in the way he looked at me. The fear was still there, but so was something stronger. The night was slow, full of meaningless conversations, champagne, and polite smiles. But every time his eyes met mine across the crowd, the noise around us blurred. At one point, his boss, a man in his 50s with a practiced grin, clapped him on the shoulder. "Ethan, and who's this fine young man?" Ethan hesitated for half a second, then said, clear and steady, "This is Liam, my partner." I almost forgot to breathe. The man blinked, surprised but polite. "Well, pleasure to meet you, Liam." When he walked away, Ethan looked at me, a faint tremor in his voice. "You okay?" I smiled. "I should be asking you that." He chuckled, soft and shaky. "That was terrifying." "Yeah," I said. "But you did it. And for the first time in a long time, I saw pride in his eyes, not the professional kind. Not the kind that came from a paycheck or a title, but the kind that said, "I'm done hiding." We left the gala early. Outside, the city hummed, lights reflected off puddles. Music drifted faintly from a nearby rooftop. We walked in silence, hand brushing hand, the space between us electric and fragile. "Ethan," I said finally, "that was a big step." He smiled wryly. "Felt more like jumping off a cliff." "Maybe," I said, "but sometimes falling is the only way to learn you can fly." He stopped walking then, turning toward me. His face was illuminated by the faint orange glow of a streetlight. "You always say the right thing," he murmured. "I just say what I mean." He exhaled, long and slow. "You really think I can do this? Move on." I stepped closer. "You already are." That night, for the first time, Ethan didn't fall asleep on the couch. He crawled into bed beside me, quiet, nervous, his heartbeat loud against my back. He didn't say anything, he just held me like he was afraid I'd disappear. And I held him right back, whispering against the dark, "You're here. That's enough." The following weeks were quieter, softer. We learned how to exist in this fragile peace, cooking breakfast together, arguing about whose turn it was to buy groceries, sharing playlists during rainy afternoons. Ethan started painting again, something he hadn't done since college. His canvases filled the apartment with color. Blues, grays, and streaks of gold that reminded me of sunlight after a storm. Once, while watching him work, I asked, "What are you painting?" He smiled faintly. "Us." The painting wasn't perfect, two silhouettes on a balcony, one reaching for the other under a bruised sky, but it was honest. And maybe that's all love really needs to be. But peace has a cruel sense of timing. One evening, I came home to find Ethan sitting on the couch, phone in hand, expression unreadable. My chest tightened immediately. "Who was it?" I asked before I could stop myself. He looked up slowly. "Alex's mom." I froze. "She found some of his old things," he said quietly. "Wanted to give them to me. Letters, photos, stuff from before." I sat beside him, unsure what to say. "She asked if I could come by next week." I nodded, keeping my voice steady. "Do you want to?" He hesitated. "I don't know. Part of me does. Part of me's terrified." "Then I'll go with you," I said. He looked at me, startled, grateful, conflicted. "Liam, you don't have to." "I want to," I interrupted. "You shouldn't have to do this alone." The visit came sooner than either of us expected. It was a small house on the outskirts of town, quiet, surrounded by the kind of garden that looked like it had been loved for decades. Alex's mother, a woman with soft eyes and grief that time hadn't quite softened, greeted us at the door. She looked at Ethan for a long moment before pulling him into a hug. He froze, then slowly hugged her back. "I'm glad you came," she whispered. Inside, the air smelled faintly of lavender and dust. She led us to the living room, where a box sat on the coffee table. Inside were photos, old Polaroids, a few folded letters. Ethan picked one up, his hands trembling. It was a picture of him and Alex at the lake, the same one I'd seen before, only now there were words written on the back. "Summer 2017, our best day yet." Ethan smiled weakly, tears in his eyes. Alex's mom touched his shoulder gently. "He loved you, you know. You gave him the happiest years of his life." Ethan swallowed hard. "I loved him too." She nodded. "And that's okay. Loving someone doesn't mean you stop living after they're gone." Her gaze shifted toward me then, kind but knowing. "You must be Liam." "Yes, ma'am." She smiled, tired but genuine. "Thank you for taking care of him." I felt my throat tighten. "He takes care of me too." For a moment, silence hung between us, not heavy, just full of things that didn't need words. On the drive home, Ethan was quiet. The sun was setting, painting the highway in gold and orange. Finally, he said, "She gave me closure I didn't know I needed." I glanced at him. "How do you feel?" He smiled faintly. "Lighter." I reached for his hand on the console. "Good, because you deserve that." He squeezed my fingers gently, his voice barely above a whisper. I think I'm finally ready to stop living in the past. The weeks that followed felt like a slow exhale after years of holding breath. Ethan laughed more, slept better. He started talking about the future trips we might take, places he wanted to see, maybe even moving to a bigger apartment. One evening, while watching the sunset from our balcony, he turned to me and said, "You ever think about what it means to start over?" "All the time." He smiled. Yeah, I said. "But I think starting over isn't forgetting. It's choosing to keep going together." He looked at me for a long moment, then leaned in, pressing a soft kiss to my forehead. "Then let's start over," he whispered. We did. Slowly, imperfectly, beautifully. The world didn't suddenly turn kind. There were still stares when we held hands in public, still whispers, still moments when fear crept in. But we faced them together. Once, after a man muttered something hateful under his breath at a cafe, Ethan reached across the table, took my hand, and didn't let go. Not once. That tiny act of defiance of love meant everything. Later that night, as we walked home, he said, "You know, a year ago I would have walked away, pretended not to care." I smiled softly. "You've come a long way." He laughed. "Because of you." I shook my head. "No, because of us." It wasn't perfect. There were fights, loud ones, stupid ones, the kind that left dishes unwashed and doors half-slamming. But there were also apologies whispered in the dark, laughter that filled every corner of our little apartment, and quiet mornings when he'd make coffee just the way I liked it, 2 sugars, too much cream. Every day felt like rebuilding something fragile but real. And in those small moments, I realized, love isn't about erasing ghosts. It's about learning to live with them, without letting them haunt you. One winter morning, snow blanketed the city. Ethan woke me up before dawn, his eyes bright with mischief. "Come on," he said, tugging at my hand. "It's freezing," I groaned. "Exactly. Perfect snowball weather." He dragged me outside, both of us laughing like kids, throwing snow until our fingers went numb. And when he caught me in his arms, both of us breathless and grinning, he kissed me quick, cold, and full of life. "I love you," he said suddenly, like it was the easiest thing in the world. I blinked, snow melting on my lashes. "Say that again." He smiled wider. "I love you, Liam." It was the first time he'd said it without hesitation, without ghosts, and maybe that was the real beginning. That night, as we lay in bed, I asked softly, "Do you ever still think of him?" Ethan was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "Yeah, sometimes. But it's different now. He's part of who I was. You're part of who I am." I nodded, tears stinging my eyes. "That's enough for me." He smiled, fingers tracing lazy patterns on my arm. "For me too. Love doesn't erase pain. It just teaches you how to hold it without letting it crush you." And as I watched him drift to sleep, his hands still resting over mine, I realized something I'd been too afraid to admit before. He wasn't the only one healing. I was too. Spring came quietly that year, the kind that crept in through open windows and smelled like hope. The snow melted from the rooftops, the park near our apartment turned green again, and for once, time didn't feel like something running away from us. It felt like something we were finally keeping up with. Ethan had started a new project at work, designing community housing, and every night he came home exhausted but smiling, paint and sketches spread across our table. I'd sit nearby, grading papers from my high school literature class, pretending not to notice when he looked up just to watch me. We didn't need words much anymore. Silence had stopped being heavy. One evening, he asked me to go for a drive. No explanation, just that mischievous glint in his eyes that always meant trouble or something worth remembering. We drove out of the city, windows down, the wind tangling my hair. The sun was setting behind the hills, painting the sky in shades of coral and fire. He didn't speak until we reached a quiet lake, the same one from the photograph. For a moment, I couldn't move. The air buzzed with memory, and I wondered if he'd brought me there for closure or confession. He got out first, walking down to the dock. I followed, the wooden planks creaking under our feet. "I used to come here with Alex," he said softly. "We'd talk about the future." about how we were going to leave this town, start fresh somewhere no one knew us. He paused, looking out at the reflection of the sky on the water. For a long time, I thought I'd ruined that dream by surviving. I stepped closer, my voice gentle. You didn't ruin it, Ethan. You just changed it. He turned then, and his eyes caught the last bit of sunlight. I know, because you helped me see it again. My throat tightened. You don't owe me anything for that. He smiled faintly. Maybe not, but I want to give you something anyway. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small silver key. I frowned. It's for the house, he said. I bought it, just outside the city. Needs work, paint, furniture, life. But it's ours if you want it to be. For a second, all I could do was stare. Then I laughed, half crying. You're kidding. I'm not. He took my hand, pressing the key into my palm. Liam, I spent so long living in someone else's story. I want to start writing ours. That night, under the bruised sky, he kissed me slow, certain, the kind of kiss that said this is where I belong. The lake shimmered like glass behind us, and for the first time, I didn't feel like a replacement. I felt like home. Moving day came a month later. The house was small, old, full of dust and sunlight. It had creaky floors and an overgrown garden, and the first thing Ethan did was hang one of his paintings by the window, the one of us on the balcony. It's not perfect, he said, looking around, but it's honest. I smiled. That's exactly what we are. We painted walls, fixed leaks, learned how to build furniture from YouTube videos. Every mistake turned into laughter. Every quiet moment into a promise neither of us had to say aloud. Our first night there, we sat on the porch with mugs of coffee, listening to crickets and the faint hum of the highway in the distance. Ethan leaned back against the railing, looking up at the stars. You ever think about how far we've come? All the time, I said. I used to think love was supposed to be easy. Now I know it's supposed to be real. He smiled. You know what I think? What? I think Alex would have liked you. I froze, not in pain this time, but in something softer. I think he'd be glad I found someone who makes me laugh again, he continued. Someone who stays. I reached over, took his hand. Then let's keep giving him reasons to be glad. Months passed. The garden bloomed. We adopted a rescue dog who chewed everything in sight. Ethan's hair grew longer. My students learned to stop teasing me about my mystery boyfriend. And every Sunday, we drove to the lake just to watch the world stay still for a while. It wasn't a fairy tale. It wasn't supposed to be, but it was honest. It was alive. It was ours. One evening, as summer stretched lazy and golden, Ethan came up behind me while I was cooking. He wrapped his arms around my waist and rested his chin on my shoulder. Hey, he whispered. You ever wonder how we ended up here? All the time. He smiled into my neck. You think we'll make it? I turned, meeting his gaze. We already are. That night, before falling asleep, I thought about everything that had brought us here, the pain, the loss, the fear, and how, somehow, all of it had led to this quiet, steady happiness. I remembered that night in the bar, when he called me by another name, and how much it had hurt. But now I realized something. That moment wasn't the end of us. It was the beginning of him finding his way back to himself and to me. Grief had written his past, but love, real love, was helping him write his future. Months later, we hosted a small dinner at our house. Just a few close friends, laughter spilling out into the yard. Someone asked how long we'd been together, and Ethan, without missing a beat, said, long enough to know he's the best mistake I ever made. Everyone laughed. I rolled my eyes, but when he looked at me across the table, I saw it, that same spark from years ago, softer now, steadier. And I knew this was what surviving love looked like. Not perfect, not easy, but true. After everyone left, we stood outside, the night air thick with the smell of rain and jasmine. The dog barked somewhere in the yard. Ethan reached for my hand, his thumb brushing mine. Thank you, he said quietly. For what? For staying. For not giving up on me when I didn't know how to love right. I smiled. You learned. He nodded. Because you taught me. We stood there for a long time, the moonlight catching on his skin, the sound of the world fading into the background. And in that silence, I realized something simple and profound, that love isn't about being someone's first choice. It's about choosing each other again and again, no matter how many ghosts came before. Years later, when I look back on that night at the bar, on the photograph, on the lake, it doesn't hurt anymore. It just feels like part of the story that brought us home. Because sometimes love doesn't arrive clean or easy. Sometimes it comes tangled in loss, wrapped in fear, but still somehow shining. And when it does, you hold on. You hold on with everything you have. Ethan once told me he didn't believe in forever. Now, every time I wake up to find him still, their hair a mess, breathing softly beside me, I know he was wrong. Forever isn't something you find. It's something you build, one day, one promise, one heartbeat at a time. Thank you for listening. If you find it interesting, please like and subscribe to follow the next stories.